It may be useful to look back at how the U.S. government defended our involvement in Vietnam, all the way to the long overdue pullout. The similarity with viewpoints and statements made by our current leaders is no coincidence. How many times must the cycle of violence, defeat, and grief be repeated?
How do you see it, General?
Very, very encouraged. I've never been more encouraged during my entire almost 4 years in country.
All the challenges have been met. The enemy is not beaten, but he knows that he has met his master in the field.
Yet over time, we can expect to see Iraqi troops chasing down murderers, fewer brazen acts of terror, and growing trust and cooperation from Baghdad's residents.
But elation quickly turned to embarrassment. When the soldiers learned they would not be stationed in their hometowns, half stripped off their uniforms and deserted immediately.
232 GIs killed and 900 wounded makes one of the heaviest weeks of the Vietnam War.
Good evening, everyone. This has been one of the deadliest weekends for Americans in Iraq since the war began.
Royal presidents. U.S. presidents are virtually worshipped by Americans. There's a strong tendency, especially in the past, to make them appear better than they were, more virtuous, more brilliant, figures who were larger than life. If U.S. history, as taught in almost every high school classroom, is any indication, these people chosen by the people were the best of men. I say men, of course, because in over 200 years, there have been no women yet. The truth is a bit more challenging. While some have been extraordinary, many, perhaps most, were rogues and racists who presided over systems of naked inequality, injustice, and brutality. There ain't no need to soft-soap this truth, stated baldly by John Hope Franklin, Duke University's professor of history emeritus, who once explained, "The truth is that we're a bigoted people and always have been." Thomas Jefferson didn't mean it when he wrote that all men are created equal. We've never meant it. The religion of this country is every man for himself and getting it, and the devil take the hindmost. As fellow historian Howard Zinn noted in his classic A People's History of the United States, as regards the record of U.S. presidencies in the early 20th century between 1901 and 1921, the presidents were Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson. Whether Republican or Democrat, watched Negroes being lynched, observed murderous riots against blacks in Statesboro, Georgia, Brownsville, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, and did nothing. The great Du Bois spoke of this era with its ugly red summers, seasons of blood and death for black people, north and south, while the government sat back, doing nothing. The penultimate French student of America, Alexis de Tocqueville, once observed that presidents were kind of temporary princes with their royal prerogatives. They were essentially anti-democratic officers who, using vaguely democratic means to acquire power, then proceed to utilize it against democratic forces in society. That's what President George W. Bush means when he announces, "I'm the decider." He could care less about non-binding resolutions or, for that matter, binding ones. And while it would have been easy to decry this as a decidedly Bushite trait, it would be inaccurate. It is the nature of the presidency to accrue more power to itself, and every presidency since Washington has sought to do so. The national pool from which presidents have been drawn have been so shallow that they always tend to reflect white men of wealth from a very narrow social base. For example, how many folks would think of Bush, the son, and Al Gore as distant relatives? They are. Both have British origins. Indeed, Bill Clinton is distantly related to the Windsors, the British royal house. So is Bush, for that matter. And perhaps there's a reason presidents are so close to princes, eh? Yet, there remains, centuries after the revolution, a deep tendency among Americans to follow the president's bidding virtually without question. Voices reflecting this Toryist view are echoed every day on the nation's talk shows. Well, none other than Abraham Lincoln said when he was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives in 1848, arguing in opposition to the Mexican War, said that there is a significant difference between the president and the country. Speaking on the floor of the House, he argued, but the distinction between the cause of the president in beginning the war and the cause of the country after it has begun is a distinction which you cannot perceive. To you, the president and the country seem to be all one. You're interested to see no distinction between them, and I venture to suggest that possibly your interests blind you a little. We see the distinction, as we think, clearly enough, and our friends who have fought in the war had no difficulty in seeing it also. Perhaps when he was elected president, he thought somewhat differently on the matter. It's a kind of madness to treat presidents like princes. In a true democracy, there can be no one decider. The people in various branches of government, and indeed outside of government, decide. It's about time to try that idea. From death row, this is Mumia, Abu-Jamal.
These commentaries are produced by Noel Hanrahan for Prison Radio.
Make no mistake about it. I don't want a man in here to go back home thinking otherwise. We are going to win.
They can't shake my nerve. They just can't shake it. So long as I think I'm doing the right thing, and so long as we can win, I'm going to leave our kids there because it's necessary for the security of this country. If I didn't think that we could win, I'll pull them out.